Welcome to Her Success Matters, a podcast exploring how advisors can work together to build a pathway for women to succeed in financial services. I am your host, Christine Shaw, CEO of InvestmentNews. This podcast will give you a rare insider access to the top financial services executives who are taking action to break down the barriers for the next generation of female advisors. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Matters. Our guest is Cheryl Nash, CEO of Tegra 118, formerly known as Fiserv. Cheryl, tell us a bit about your background.
Great. Thank you, Christine. It's really nice to be here. So I have been with this business that is now Tegra 118 since the very beginning. I was actually the fourth hire at a small little company called Security APL. And my background really is, growing up in this company. I played every role except for technology and QA. And I've been able to, really see this business from the beginning grow into such a large fintech business in our industry. So we've had 3 acquisitions. Tegra 118 is really the one that's the most exciting for me because it's really moving into a standalone business where we get to rename ourselves, put a bold new presence out there, and really think about growth. So I've been in this, my entire career in this business. Another thing that I'm very focused on is really helping women. So I'm excited about this conversation today. A big passion of mine is bringing more women into financial services. And then once they're in, really making sure that they're very successful. So look forward to the conversation on that.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. That's really helpful. And how unusual, as you stated, that it's very rare for someone to spend as much time and have a variety of roles in one company, leading up to the CEO and now head of this new company. So one, congratulations. It's very impressive. But to your point, it's about helping other women because, as you know, there's very few women in the CEO role, in particular in financial services as an industry. Let me start with you at the beginning. What made you choose financial services as an industry?
So it wasn't really a career that I thought I would end up in. I got an opportunity from someone who my father knew. I think it's always who you know that matters a lot. And I got an opportunity to intern at this little company that was a brokerage firm. And the owners of that brokerage firm got bought out way back in the 80s, before that was really something big. And when they got bought out, they decided to spin off and create their own technology firm. And they knew me from my internships, and they asked me to join. So it really was, I think, at the right place, at the right time. And I wasn't, when I was in college and really thinking about what I wanted to do, it wasn't focused on financial services. I was really more focused on communication. So I ended up here, and I don't regret any minute of it. I really love financial services. It's a really, the career trajectory for women today is better than it ever has been. And I think that everybody goes to school not really understanding what they're going to do and where they're going to end up. And many people that I know, ended up at the place they are, really because of either who they know or they, got a great, interview and they decided to take a chance. So financial services and fintech especially is where I landed, and I'm really happy that I did.
That's fantastic. So in other words, financial services chose you, but then you made a phenomenal career of that. And we'll get into that in a minute. But let's start a little bit, though. You mentioned in your opening that you would like to attract more women to financial services. So you were in a situation where you walked into this sort of path through a connection that your father knew. What would you say to young women out there and that would appeal to them about choosing financial services and the why around financial services?
Yeah, that's a great question, Christine. I think, women today, especially young women, don't really look at financial services as a career. They still think of this industry as male-dominated, the Wolf of Wall Street industry. And it's, not further from the truth. I think there's a lot of opportunities for women in this industry. It's a relationship industry, which women are really good at. And what I'm, really trying to help women understand is, when you come into a financial services industry, there's so many different career options. There's things that you can do that you wouldn't even, know without talking to somebody who's in the industry, because you don't necessarily learn that at school. So I would recommend to young women that they open their eyes. They really try to get a sense of an industry from an industry perspective. Reach out to other women who are in this industry, but think about the different areas of focus. You can be a financial advisor, you can be a financial planner, you can be somebody running marketing, in marketing, you can be somebody in product management, you can be a wholesaler. There's just so many career opportunities in financial services. I think it's one of the few industries that actually has that. And I would, really, talk to women about, starting a career, because it's really, you can have a successful and enriching career if you, if you start right out of school.
I love the different roles that you talked about, because I think you're right that a lot of women are not aware of the vast opportunities within financial services. And in fact, there's a lot of research that suggests that usually women take roles that are more in HR or different types of roles. And that's why there's a shortage of women, especially on the management path and in the CEO role. Was that your experience, or have you seen that yourself throughout your career?
I have. I've seen that women aren't necessarily comfortable for, raise their hand and say, I want to try that role, where men are much more comfortable doing so. So I think women look for safe careers and careers that they feel that they can be successful in without really trying to, maybe look at other areas that they're not necessarily, that comfortable in, and really going out there on a limb. But I think things have really changed in the last 5 years. I think there's more and more focus on companies bringing more women in, especially bringing them up the ladder and finding women to fill senior leadership roles. There's, firms out there that have, their leaders are bonused on making sure they have diverse teams. So I say now to a lot of the college students I speak to that there's really never been a better time for a woman to come into this industry, because of the focus and the support and the help. And there's so many different people like myself who are really trying to make sure that women who come in not only come in, but they stay in and they're successful and they have people to reach out to when they need to.
And actually, that's a great point, because there was an article written in the Wall Street Journal in February, Why So Few CEOs Are Women. It was written by Vanessa Furman. And what she discusses is the broken rung that women might enter, but then they exit either to raise their family or they rejoin. Do you think that what we're dealing with right now, you and I sitting here on a Zoom from home, different parts of the country due to COVID, do you think that flexibility will become the new normal in a post-COVID world? Is it teaching us that we can do our jobs?
Absolutely. You know what? When you're in crisis, there's always things that come out that are positive. And I would say for us in the business that I lead, one of the most positive things is making this work. We know, especially even on my senior leadership team, I have women who have young kids at home, and both spouses are home so they can share that support. But we're being very flexible, and they're still getting the job done. In fact, most of them are working harder than they ever have because they don't have to travel, sit in a car for an hour or so driving to work. So I think we're going to learn a lot through this. And I think the flexibility, the ability to work remotely, different hours. You don't need everybody working the exact same hours. It's proving out right now. So I can just see this really being a good time for women and companies to relook at their current situations and be more flexible. Support
I agree.
more women.
I apologize, Cheryl. Yes, I agree with that notion, because in that discussion is that the biggest barrier is fear with women because of lack of flexibility, and they don't want to ask for that flexibility because it would be viewed as a negative towards them and the confidence. So I do think that this is teaching everybody, companies and individuals, a good lesson in what that could look like. and the benefits. So let's talk about the benefits. You as a female CEO, you've built your career in financial services. What can you tell us about the direct benefits from having a diverse workforce?
Yeah, I've always believed in surrounding yourself with the best people. And I think if you don't, and that means not people that look like you or act like you or have the same background as you, if you don't do that and you don't really look at diversity and inclusion, obviously, you're not going to have your personally you won't grow, and your business won't grow as much as it could with different ideas and different people bringing in diverse views. It's really important to have a diverse senior leadership team driving a business. They do, come together right now in this COVID world. My senior leadership team and myself, we meet every morning at 8:30, and we just go through what happened the day before, especially in a world that, we're not in front of each other, and then what things we need to focus on. It's brought us a lot closer. But we also make sure that everybody's, where they're sitting today, what they're feeling today, all those things are heard, just because it's such an important thing right now. There's nothing, right now, and especially in this COVID world, I'm very fortunate to have such a strong team because, communication has never been more important than it is right now. And those diverse, people on the team, and making sure that we're all thinking and talking in the same way, and in helping our team members really come to the challenges of what they're doing every day. It's been really good to surround yourself with people who are different. And I say that I speak a lot on this topic. My motto has always been surround yourself with the best people, and it always will be. And that means people who are completely different than you in the way they think, because what that does is it's made me stronger as a person, made me stronger as a leader, and it's really critical not to surround yourself with people who look just like you.
I agree with that notion, and there's so much research that demonstrates that it's diversity makes a great outcome. The end product is better because you get the input of all those different minds and talents that come from different backgrounds and perspectives. So that's fantastic. And you mentioned, Cheryl, when we started out the conversation, that companies who put bonuses into their leadership team directly tied to hiring diverse population. So tell me a little bit about that and what those programs look like. And do you do any of that inside Tegra 118?
Yeah, so as we just are moving out of Fiserv and into this new world, we haven't put that in place yet, but that is something that is on our plan. So let me tell you what that looks like for firms that I'm working with today. It's not necessarily the hiring of diverse people, it's making sure that you have diverse talent in your pipeline. And making sure that when you're going through a recruiting process, especially for senior leaders, that you also include in that interview process, that recruiting process, diverse candidates, so that you actually get the opportunity to choose the right person for that role. And I think that's really important because in many cases, those diverse candidates don't even show up. So you have to, and compensation drives behavior. You may have to make sure from a bonus perspective or how you're really, giving your leaders, focus and goals. It's goal setting. It's how you pay out. It's really critical that you have that focus on diverse culture. And that's something that I think is important. I think a lot of the larger firms today have actually put that in place. Like I said, now that we're moved into a much smaller organization, that's our goal. And as we start really, hiring again and, putting, senior leaders in place, that is definitely something that we're going to be focused on because, like I said, it's really critical. But there's ways that you can do that today. And it's really simple ways of making sure you have a diverse candidate list. It's even looking at how your job descriptions are written, making sure that they're written more for diverse candidates. Some words that you use, resonate better with women than they do with men. So really making sure as you're going through all of that, that you're putting the right process and the right goals and the right compensation packages in place to ensure that you do have a diverse candidate pool and ultimately hire the right person for the role.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. So thank you for clarifying that, because you're right. It is about attracting the right talent, and sometimes we don't even realize the biases that are written in something as simple as a job description. And so if you don't have the pipeline of talent coming in to interview for position, then you're not able to hire the right people in some cases. So that's a great background on that and some good takeaways. And then let's talk a little bit about mentorship and sponsorship. One of the things we've learned through this podcast is a lot of times men will get the job because they have an internal sponsor within the company, and that can make a big difference. So can you speak a little bit about your experience with that or what you've seen there?
Sure. So I have been very lucky, I'd say, in my career to have good sponsors. I've also known that having a good sponsor doesn't just come easily. You have to prove to that sponsor that you're a hard worker, that you can get the job done, that that they can put trust in you, because usually they're talking about you in a room that you're not in, that you don't even know about, and they're talking about how they can advance your career. So sponsorship is really critical, especially when I think about how we can sponsor more women getting management positions. So I always tell people that, if you want to have a sponsor, that's not something you ask for. And it's also, you have to prove it. You have to make sure that there's people that are seeing you succeed, seeing you work hard, because it's not just something that happens. But I have been very lucky. Most of my sponsors have obviously been men, just because of the industry and how, the time of, me being in this industry. But, the sponsors have helped me personally grow, have looked out for me in meetings, have given me jobs that I normally wouldn't have gotten, and jobs that actually stretched and challenged me. So I would say, if you're in an organization, there's an opportunity, you have somebody on your team who's a diverse candidate, who you think could do this, who you're going to make sure that you obviously help along the way, put them in that role, give them an opportunity, let them shine, because without that, especially in bigger companies, you just get lost. So you need to make sure that you stand out in the work you do, and that ultimately you have that sponsor who's really behind you and helping you. Sponsorship is very different than mentorship. Mentorship is really, a two-way relationship. You're that person's mentor. That person knows they're your mentee. I really have been, I think, I always think, how can I give back? I've mentored women in this industry, and I have seen them, successfully grow in their careers. And there's nothing more rewarding than that. They have, it's been women who are, just at the point where they know they want to grow. They're not quite sure how to do that. So I help them think that through. It's really writing goals together. It's really helping them, a phone call. I'm just trying to just be a phone call away if something happens that they need some support with. But mentorship is for women and men in companies to really have somebody who's been there and done to help you, who help you. Somebody told me this once, and I think it's really important too, that find a mentor who's in a job that you want to get to one day. Don't find a mentor who's just, somebody who, and sometimes they're assigned to you, so you can't help that. But if you have an opportunity to find somebody who's in a job that you want to be, and you can see yourself in, years out in that job, that is probably the best mentor you can get, because that person can really help you get to that career that you want to get to, or that job that you want to get to. So two different things, but two very important things, especially for women.
Yes. And, I really appreciate that you gave the distinction between mentorship and sponsorship, because they are very, very different. But my favorite word that you used within both descriptions is the M word, men, because people have this preconceived notion that because we're talking about helping women, that somehow that's a friction with men. And what we have found more and more that men are really supportive of this. And, Mike Durbin from Fidelity, who's one of my guests, talks about men as allies, and they have a program around that. And I think that it's a great opportunity to come together and realize that this is everyone's problem to solve. It's not an individual's problem or specific, men versus women. It's all of us coming together and helping to solve the problem. So that's fantastic.
The men versus women doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't
work, right?
No.
It's they both, we have to help each other. And like you said, men allies are really supportive and can really help. Like I just said, how you help women succeed.
Yeah.
Men allies, like I said, all my, mentors and most of my sponsors have been men. And it's been very, very helpful to me. So yeah, you're right. It's not men versus women. It's really, how do we do this together?
Yeah. And I didn't really realize it until I was thinking, as you were saying, you have to find someone who ultimately you want their job and ask them to be your mentor. And it brings me back to one of my very first jobs. I was working, believe it or not, as an assistant to a president. And one day I said, can I bring my desk into your office and sit there every day so I can learn from you? Now, little did I know at that time I would become a CEO, but I guess there's those subliminal things in your mind that go on. So that would be, he's one of my, he is absolutely one of my mentors. He's now no longer with us, but Gene Marsh, he was a president of a software company. So thank you, Cheryl, for reminding me of that.
It's so important.
It is. So this was a fantastic conversation. I just want to summarize some of the key takeaways for the audience. So one is about really demonstrating to young women the variety of roles and different career paths they can take in financial services as a starting point. Two is making sure that companies provide pathways within it through incentive programs, through hiring and talent pools, and ensuring that they're attracting the right candidates to begin with, and ensure the leadership team is tied into this and believes in it and acts in a way to support that and is incentivized that way. And then also that one, find mentorship or sponsorship, but if you're in a fortunate situation like yourself or myself, give back by being your mentor and make sure that you're participating in an active way in helping to solve this problem together. Would you add anything to that, Cheryl?
No, and then surround yourself with the best people. I think that's the last thing I would add, but I think you summarized very well, so I appreciate that.
And our final word, which is always my last question to my guest, is, Cheryl, in your own words, please tell the audience why her success matters.
So her success matters because, when you look at the women in our world today, even now in COVID, the heroes and the frontline workers, they're, really highlighting a lot of women, nurses working at grocery stores, bank tellers, all those jobs that are very focused on women. Her success matters now more than ever. I think we need to, those of us who are fortunate enough to be CEOs of companies, who've grown up in companies, who've grown up in this industry, we have to give back. And giving back is a very simple thing by helping more women, speaking out for diverse candidates, making sure that we're bringing women into roles that might be uncomfortable for them, but we help them along the way. But there's never been, I think I said this earlier, there's never been a better time to get women involved. Everybody's focused on it. We know women are great at relationships. Women are great at team building. Women are great at running companies. So I would suggest, and I would really push forward some of the things that we talked about today, Christine, to make sure that every company is focused on this and every company really understands that her success matters.
I couldn't have put that better myself. So Cheryl, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for participating in the conversation and making the time for such an important topic. And I wish you and your team health and safety during this very unusual time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Success Matters. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available, and share this podcast with others that believe her success matters.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Investment News. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.